The Warnborough Club.
So I'd like to introduce Shurooq Amin, an incredible poet and artist who graduated from Warnborough College with a PhD in ekphrasis. So firstly, what do you feel that Warnborough offered you that other universities couldn't?
For me, it was the flexibility. I felt, first of all, flexibility, and second of all, the choice of subjects. Because I was an artist, but I was also a poet. And there were a few characters in literature and in history that I could relate to in that sense, like Khalil Gibran, William Blake, poets that also did art. So I wanted to focus on that. And it's a very, very narrow field, and it wasn't available everywhere. So I really loved that Warnborough offered that. And they offered it as well with this flexibility, like my time was my own. It was very self-paced in a way. There was obviously a time frame that you had to finish the course in, but within that time frame, there was a lot of flexibility.
Perfect. Yeah, that's obviously what you need when you're doing a PhD, especially.
Yeah.
Doing so many other things as well. Okay, yeah. Amazing. So can you tell us a bit about your course and any highlights that you can think of?
Well, I loved the fact that part of it was very structured. So we had to learn about, read about and learn about so many poets and really delve into the lives and the psychology behind these poets. And I love that part of it, because that part of it was important for me, because that's the whole point of a PhD, is to delve deep into these things. And the other thing was to find something within that structure that was unique. So we did very structured lessons whereby I was reading, let's say, William Stevens, or even Emily Dickinson. We take the poet, read as much of the oeuvre as is possible, and then there were specific questions that Dr. Maria Giacchetti, she was my mentor, specific questions she would ask. And then I would answer these questions based on my readings. So it was very structured in that sense. But then after all of that, I had the flexibility of doing a small chapbook of my own poetry in the style of that poet. So I did almost, between 12 to 20 poets, really reading into their lives, into their psyche, reading as much of their oeuvre as possible. Extremely thorough, extremely time consuming, but very enjoyable. And then at the end of each poet's oeuvre, I would have to provide a chapbook of my own poetry, create completely original poetry, but within the theme and style of that poet. But it's all original. So by the end of the 2 years, 2 or 3 years, or 2.5 years or something like that, I had about 800 pages of just original poetry. It was insane how much I had produced. If I sit down now and try to write a volume of poetry, it's not going to be possible for me to do it the way I had done it during that course. The course gears you to become the best version of yourself as a writer, reader, poet, artist. It's just somehow it takes you really in depth into your own psyche and into your own creativity. And I feel like the best poetry I've ever written in my life was produced during that time. And I ended up, with my dissertation ended up being, I could publish it in several books. It was that thorough and that big. And I also loved the fact that I could bring art into it. So after all of that, after studying all those poets and writing poetry in every possible genre and format you can imagine, from classical odes and Shakespearean stanzas to very modern prose poetry and free verse, and shape poems and all sorts of stuff, all the way from that to actually bringing in the art and being able to write poems for Kuwaiti artists. I took Kuwaiti artists because I wanted to be very relevant to my region where I'm from. I took contemporary artists as well as very established artists, and I did original poems for their paintings based on everything I had learned. So it was a beautiful, beautiful, thorough course. Yeah.
That's really good. That sounds good. I've looked at quite a lot of your work, but I'm definitely gonna look into more of your poetry now. As such an influential and talented artist, how do you think your time at Warnborough aided your career development and personal development? I suppose in a way you've already answered that, but
Yeah.
is there anything you can specifically think of, like any sort of, this ties into the second question, so any specific skills that you've used throughout your career that you've been able to specifically put into practice?
Yeah, I think everything the things I've learned during my PhD course at Warnborough, I have applied in my art in specific to the titles. My titles as an artist are super important. I know a lot of artists just go with the untitled thing. For me, my work tells a story. It's not just a painting that you see. When I do a series of paintings, and you walk into the room, you walk into the gallery, there is a story. There is a beginning, a middle, and end. There is a climax. There is a problem to be solved. There is a question to be answered. And so the titles for me in my paintings are very crucial in the sense that they harper back to all of that, all of the things I learned during my course. So I would take, for example, something like I have a painting called Blind New World, which is a twist from Brave New World. Just things that I take, titles from, or a title from Marianne Moore, Amy Lowell, Chitra Banerjee, even. I have a painting called The Goddess of Small Things, which is a twist on the God of Small Things. So it's all, that title for that painting is a twist on something I've learned during my course, whether it's a title or a line from a poem. For example, my entire recent series that I did in January 2020, which was right before COVID hit, was called Like Russian Dolls, We Nest in Previous Selves. That is a line from a Diane Ackerman poem that I had analyzed during my course at Warnborough. It was one of the poems I analyzed. Diane Ackerman was one of my favorite poets, and a lot of my poetry stems from her tone, her style, that tongue-in-cheekness, that kind of unexpected twist at the end. Before you reach the end, there's this kind of climax that takes you to a conclusion that you just don't expect. So Like Russian Dolls, We Nest in Previous Selves has so many meanings for me. It's like you've got the matryoshka Russian dolls. They are, first of all, there's the concept of cloning. There's a concept of one inside the other, the sameness, the identical conformity, which appeals to our society in the Middle East, because in the Middle Eastern society, you are raised to conform, you are raised to be the same. Individuality is not encouraged because you have to follow the grind, follow the format that's set to you by societal norms.
Especially for women, I'd imagine.
Yes, especially for women, absolutely. So that title also for me takes me into the depth of the poem by Diane Ackerman and what she meant within that poem about history and our biology and our DNA and our ancestors, that no matter how progressive we are, we will always carry within us the DNA of our ancestors, and God only knows what they were like. We've got them inside us, whether we like it or not. So no matter how much work we do we work on ourselves and try to improve ourselves with the self-care, self-development, etc., that DNA is there, and can we change our DNA? Then you move into this other more philosophical / scientific biological question. How can we change it? Yes, you can change your DNA. We know now, but how? And so on. And so it takes you, so that one line from one poem takes you into a story, into a series, into a whole series of paintings, into this philosophical concept. So it all ties together. For me as an artist, they all come together. Yeah.
Okay, and lastly, what advice would you give to future students that to help them get the most out of their course?
Definitely pick something you enjoy. I mean, you have to enjoy what you do because it is very challenging. The mentor is very important. Dr. Maria Giacchetti was amazing. You have to make sure that you enjoy the course, you enjoy what you do, your mentor is on the right track with you, and just just make sure you enjoy it because it's there are going to be days that are so challenging that you do want to give up. There are that those moments do happen, you know, especially if you're at an age where maybe you didn't continue your PhD straight from your master's or your master's straight from your BA. Maybe
Yeah.
you took a break. And if you took a break and you're just jumping into this course, you have a life. You have maybe a spouse, maybe you have kids, maybe you have a job, maybe you have responsibilities.
Yeah.
So you have to be prepared. However, Warnborough gives you that flexibility that you can incorporate any course within your life. I think it's brilliant in that way. You can fit it in somehow, and there is leeway. There is I love the coziness of Warnborough. There's a certain coziness that, you know, they understand that you're human. They understand that you're a person with a life. They don't treat you like a number. You know, yes, you're given an ID number, but you're not that number. You are a human. You're a face. You're a name. You're a soul, and that's very, very evident in the way they treat you and the way they deal with you if you have a problem. So, yeah, highly recommend it.
The Warnborough Echo.